Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of In the Umpire's Clubhouse. That's Dale Scott waving in the background. There's Jim Joyce. I'm Bob Busser, and today we've got a very interesting show. We've had umpires on before, and we've got another umpire, Bach and Bob Davidson, joining us today. But we have an NHL linesman, a retired, and we're all retired guys. So this is a theme here. We've got a retired NHL linesman, Scott Driscoll, and he lives in Canada. Is you live in Guelph, right, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Okay, he's from Guelph, Ontario. And Scott, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Bob.
Welcome, Scott. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you too, Dale.
I just saw you a couple weeks ago. It ain't that good for me.
I know, Bob. Me neither. I'm still suffering the effects.
Yeah, we just lost the Canadian audience, so
Oh boy.
here we go.
Scott, give us a little background. How long did you work in the NHL? How long have you been working with, or did you work hockey in total? And I love hockey. I wish Portland would get a team. It'd be awesome. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I typical small town Canadian kid. I played hockey since I think I skated before I walked. But I started officiating when I was 14 in my hometown. And then as time went on, I wasn't quite good enough to make it to the National Hockey League as a player. I did have a tryout in 1990 with the Vancouver Canucks, but that was very short-lived. I started officiating junior hockey in 1989, and by 1992, the National Hockey League hired me as a linesman. They called it 40-40 linesman. I did half my games in NHL and half in the American League. And after that season, they promoted me full-time, and I spent the next 27 years. So 28 years in total being with the National Hockey League. I retired March of 2020. I was supposed to work my last game in New York. They allow us to choose where we work. They allow us who we work with. But there's this thing that was going around the globe called COVID, and that threw a little curveball. And I didn't get my last game. It turned out my last game was in Toronto, which was fine. I had my entire family there. And yeah, it was over 2,000 games between regular season and playoffs, a lot of wear and tear. And a week from today, I'll be going under the knife to get a new hip. And that's just one of the perils of being a guy my size on the ice as much as I was.
Well, and how tall are you? Because you get on those skates and it's mammoth.
Well, I'm actually under height. Like according to my weight, I should be about 7'2". But I was 6'4". I was 6'4", and usually weighed in around 250 pounds, depending on how many pieces of pie I had after my turkey dinner. So I was a bigger individual out there, but again, that's just the genetics I was dealt with, and no big deal.
Well, that's the poutine after every game, right? In the locker room, you got to have poutine in Canada, right? Keep you warm.
Oh, and hot dogs too. Like we really like, one of the best things that I liked about working in the old Montreal Forum is they brought in the best hot dogs after the game.
I agree with you.
They were so good. It was just like so amazing to have those hot dogs. So
I think it's amazing. Go ahead, Bob.
No, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, my son plays rec hockey here, and my son's 6'5". And when I went to go see him play, he'd walk off the ice. It was, it's incredible to see another 3 inches. On somebody.
That's what Bob said.
It's unbelievable.
Bob wanted 3 more inches, but
my wife does.
Well, we had
that's a different podcast.
Yes.
So we had a linesman. Mike Civic was 6'9", and he was over 7 feet on skates. And yeah,
that's amazing.
That was a very big unit.
What about Zeno Chara? He's 6'7", 6'9", isn't he?
I believe he's 6'7", 6'8". Yeah, no, whatever it is. Once you get over 6'5", that's really tall.
So, Bob. Scott, we got 2 Bobs. Scott, I'm confused. I'm a Scott, and we're all confused. Or maybe it's just me. Anyway, but you needed all that because as a linesman, you're the fun guys to get to break up all that stuff, right? All those fights, and the referees just skate around and look pretty. How does that work?
Pretty much, yeah. You nailed it. Like Dale, you couldn't have given a better assessment. They're the prima donnas. They skate around. They make sure their hair is not out of place. They're kind of the guys out there directing traffic, and we're the grunt guys. We're in there. We dive in first. And what's funny is last night I was at a junior B game, And one of the kids playing, his dad was an NHL player. And I talked to him after because he came up to me before a game one time, and him and this other guy on the other team, they were going to fight that night, and they were going to go for the record. I think the record was like 65 seconds nonstop punching, and they were going to go try to beat it. So Chris Barge came up and he goes, "Hey, Driscoll, giving you a heads up tonight when we go, we're going to go for 65 seconds." I go, "You don't have to tell me. I'm not breaking it up. I'm not getting injured." So we were front row and center of some of the most entertaining fights of the game. And yeah, we just stood there and watched. And eventually the heavyweights broke themselves up. They'd look at us, they'd be gasping for air. They go, "Okay, come in." And we'd be like, "All right, you sure you're done?" "Yep, good." So
Well,
there's
it's kind of
more.
it's kind of like
Well, you know,
baseball. They all hug each other, or they,
exactly.
they're after each other. And then when, not going after each other. Then when they get pulled back and start, and then they get really, really tough, really, really tough. Like, all right,
Yeah. Hockey fights are hockey fights. These guys are throwing haymakers, man. They don't screw around.
yeah, no.
Some of
When I was first hired, I was full of piss and vinegar, and I would definitely want to get in there and try to break up fights. But some of the older guys would be like, "Don't you rush in. It just makes them braver." And a guy named Bob Hodges would stand back and he'd look at me and say, "Back up, kid." He goes, "All right, who's tough here? Drop your gloves and fight. If not, pick them up and stop screwing around so we can get out of here tonight." And he was right. Like, the words that hockey players hated to hear was "let them go."
We actually had that kind of a rule too. Remember, guys, when they finally told us, they said, don't get yourself involved when this guy goes to the mound. Don't rush up there we used to rush and try to catch the catcher or catch the batter or whatever like that. And finally they said, no, you just stand back, take names. And, we weren't hockey referees. We shouldn't have been involved in the first place. But I do have one thing. I have a hockey referee story.
Okay.
Jim McKean I don't know, did you ever meet Jim McKean?
I did, yes.
One of the best, loved hockey from Montreal. And anyway, we're in Boston and we leave tickets for Paul Stewart. And I'm sorry, but I can't think of his first name, Van Helleman.
Andy.
Okay.
Andy Van Helleman. And we left tickets for them on a day game in Boston. And I'm working first base. McKean's got the plate. And they kind of yelled down to McKean, and I see him waving and stuff like this. And Stewart and Van Helleman are walking through the lower concourse at Boston, and a foul ball goes up in the air, and it's headed right. I mean, it was like a laser guided missile. And Stewart sees it, and he's kind of boxing Van Helleman out of the way, and he's waiting for it and waiting for it. And all of a sudden the ball comes down, hits Van Helleman right in the middle of the head and bounces and goes back into the crowd. And Stewart gets pissed at him for not catching the ball, and he pushes Van Helleman. And anybody else in the stands would have knocked him out. And here they're arguing over not catching the damn ball. And I to this day I can see it like it happened yesterday. Now my question is, did you work with Paul Stewart?
I work with Paul and Andy. Yeah, Stewie was a very colorful official. He was a great man. He had the biggest heart you could ever imagine. Even now, he reaches out.
Was it true when he played? Because he played in the NHL, didn't he?
Oh, yes.
Wasn't he a tough guy?
Oh, yeah. And every year at training camp, Stewie would, I don't know where he found these tapes, but he would find tapes of him fighting guys like Stan Jonathan and Terry O'Reilly. Stewie was a tough guy. He legitimately would go into Boston Garden and he would fight all their tough guys. And he would, like, there's stories of him standing in front of the bench, like basically calling, "Okay, who's next? Who's next?" Not that Paul won all the fights, but Paul showed up for them. And the thing is, Paul let you know about it. Like you didn't have to ask Paul about his history. He told you all about it. So great man, Paul Stewart.
I think that's amazing, actually.
I know what it's like, Jimmy, to be a linesman because working on crews with you and Dale as crew chief, and you guys standing around, I had to go in and break up many fights.
Well,
most of them are my fault.
Yeah, clean up your own mess, Bob. But the point is if I was officiating hockey, I'd be the one with the pretty hair running around watching you break up stuff, Scott.
Imagine that. Imagine
that's a fair assessment
nice.
because those guys that had the coif looks and whatnot, they made a lot more than us grunts that were in the trenches. So It is what it is, right? We always fought about money and chirping, and
Sure.
I get well, if you wanted to referee and make the big bucks, you could have referee, but I would not have been a good referee. I take things too personally. I was better suited to go out and call the lines, and most lines people jobs. It's definitely it's black and white. It's not the gray is the referee, and it's the massaging of the rules where I was out there icing offsides, breakup fights. That was my forte, and I enjoyed it. So,
A quick question on that though: do linesmen do they call any fouls or just?
yeah, we actually in amateur hockey, which I supervise, there's a rule in there. It says the linesman, and even the NHL, it's the same thing. The linesman will report their version of what happened when they're asked. And I tell the people down here, if you see something and it's like they need to know, you go up and say, "Hey, would you like to know what happened?" And you should shake your head, and the ref's supposed to go, "Yeah," but no. Like for the National Hockey League level, we could call too many men on the ice. We could call puck shot out of play. We could assess an unsportsmanlike penalty, a 10-minute misconduct penalty, a game misconduct for verbal abuse.
Right.
Any major penalty that was missed by the referees, like when the guy's laying there in a pool of blood and they missed it, you come in and you just kind of get together as a crew and you want to get the right call. And I prided myself on being that person that I wasn't the fastest or fleetest of foot out there, but I saw most things. I saw what happened, and I was a person that I thought they could rely on and give them the versions of what happened. And I was normally right. I wasn't always right, but I was normally right.
You know, Cubby, I got two things. Number one, Dale Scott is our version of Chris Rooney.
Whoa!
That's why I have his jersey.
Whoa! Whoa!
You know, you talk about verbal abuse before you would issue a misconduct. Like, how far do you let a player go? I mean, is there certain players who are obviously kind of anal openings you probably don't let go as far, and that's kind of what we did in baseball. But like, what is the drop off the line that you wouldn't take anymore?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the game situation, right? Like sometimes we were always taught about emotion versus abuse, right? When it's a close game and you get emotion involved, you might want to take a little bit more. But there's definitely people that they pretty much had a lifetime warning. There's a couple guys that I just said, "Hey, I'm never warning you again for the rest of my life. Just assume that every time I work a game and you're on the ice, you've been warned, and the next step is a penalty." So there were guys that I definitely they just graded me the wrong way. When I was young and I started out, I was again full of piss and vinegar. I would usually just kind of give it back to them. And then after a while, they said, "That's not professional. You really shouldn't be doing that." And I went, "Oh, okay. I have a toolbox where I can assess them a penalty." And the older I got, actually, the smarter I was and the less emotional. And I remember my last year, there's a particular player that the puck was there and I went to pick it up and he knocked it away from me. And I looked at him. I said, "Well, that was really rude." And he looked at me and says, "Yeah, well, what are you going to do about it?" I went, now the hairs on my neck are starting to stand up. I says, "Well, I could give you a pound." And he says, "Oh yeah, well, you don't have any male anatomy part that," he said, "I didn't have." I go, "Actually, I do. And not only do you have a 2, you got a 10 too." So I gave him 12 minutes and I went to the coach and I said, "Yeah, buddy there, he knocked the puck away." I said, "That was rude." He said, "I didn't have the gonads to make the call." And I did. And that's true. And then I looked at a fourth line winger. I go, "Hey, I just got you a few more shifts next period." And the kid came up and he goes, "Driscoll, as much as I appreciate it, you can't say that in front of the coach." And I go, "Yeah, I know. I was just joking around, but yeah, everybody was different. There were certain people I just could not stand. And if they wanted to, as Andy Sipowicz would say, "If you're going to piss in my ear and tell me it's raining, there's going to be a difficulty here." So
One more.
We kind of had the same situations when we were coming up too. We can cross reference this because we were kind of the same way too. When I can remember, probably the three of us when we got in, I'm sure I know I was full of piss and vinegar. And I can remember telling a guy that just kept on me. And I said, "You know what? I have the power to make you a 210 hitter." And they just kind of look at you like, "Oh," and then the light came on, a little bit. Eventually they're going to stop. But that sounds pretty much about what we went through a little bit.
Hey, Cubby, who was the biggest, in your opinion? For me, the guy I never got along with in baseball was Tom Lasorda. Is there a certain coach that was kind of an anal opening, in your opinion?
Well, Bob, off the record,
Don't do that
I would
when
tell you
I'm taking a sip of coffee, for Christ's sake.
I'm all about, what's happened in the past happened in the past, and I really don't want to embarrass anybody. Maybe if you and I are having a beer some night, I'll say it. But what I've done is I really try not to look at the negative aspects of my job. I'm all about, let's look at the positive things. And those 10% of the people out there that gave me 90% of my headaches, I don't even want to think about them anymore. I want to think about the 10% of guys like Jason Speth is the classiest hockey player that's ever lived. And he would talk to me like we were friends. And he was like genuinely concerned about my family, how they're doing. You've met Devin. Apparently Devin's supposed to meet your great niece sometime. I prefer to think about that. Now, there is one that comes to mind, and I'm not going to say his name, but what's really funny is he almost got in a fight with another coach one night, and that coach was then fired a little bit later on. We work in hockey telecasts, and that coach is John Tortorella, one of my favorite coaches ever. And Torts was like very complimentary of this rival of his, even though they had just almost came to blows earlier on that year over starting lineup. So when Torts was hired in Columbus, I made a pass by during the commercial timeout, and I said, "Hey, Torts, I missed you. Welcome back." He said, "Thanks, Scotty." I said, "But I do have a question. Last week on Hockey Night in Canada, you were praising the accolades of this one coach. Did you mean him?" He goes, "Not a freaking word." And I laughed. Like I thought that was so funny. So, but even this coach, towards the end of his career and my career, it's almost like he buried the hatchet, and we could kind of joke around. But he would get very personal. He would find out personal things about you. And I'd made the conference finals 3 years in a row as a young official, about my eighth, ninth, 10th year in the league. And I still didn't make it to the finals. And one night, my partner blew a call, and he was all over me, and he yelled, "That's why you never worked the finals." And I almost jumped over the boards at him. But, in hindsight, I'm glad I didn't. So he wasn't worth it. He's not even worth the energy to talk about now.
Let me ask you this. I've been wanting to ask, and obviously since I've been retired, I don't get to see you guys nearly as much as we used to down in Arizona when you guys do the Coyotes during spring training and stuff like that. Something that's always stuck with me, and I've watched it on video 100 times. When Weedman knocked over, and I can't think of the referee's name, from behind, whatever happened in that? And every video that I see on YouTube about it is defensive of Weedman saying that he was out of it and he didn't know where he was. And I say bullshit. And
I actually concur with you, James. Jimmy, you're right. I saw it and I just went, "Are you kidding me?" Like, we have another expression. It has to do with your fifth. But I'm like, there's no way. And I really don't know if that's settled. I know like the person that he hit, Donnie Henderson, he's had a few surgeries because
yes,
he had his vertebrae. He had issues with his vertebrae and his discs, and he had numbness in his shoulder. So he never worked another game. And he was my age. We were both born in '68. And I've ran into Donnie a couple times going through Calgary, and I know there's litigation. So we never asked Donnie. And again, like Donnie, he went on long-term disability, and I know that there was some litigation before the courts, and I really don't know where it's at. As far as Mr. Weidman, I believe he was coaching or assistant coach in the OHL or somewhere along that. I really don't know. I haven't ran into him, and as far as I'm concerned, I really don't care to.
I agree 100%. But did the NHL take any action at all?
Yeah, he was suspended 20 games, which in our books we have physical abuse of an official, 3 categories. One of them is 3 games, one's 10, one's 20, and he was given the 20 games. Now I believe, and I could be wrong because my memory is terrible now. I believe that he appealed it, and it was somewhere around after the 19th or 20th game he had served. They heard his appeal and they lowered it to 10. So he served 20 games. They lowered it to 10. But what it meant was he was able to get 10 games salary back from the league. But what I mean, Donnie's career ended, and as far as I'm concerned, he walked away with a slap in the wrist. But again, there's litigation. I don't know enough details to know to give an educated guess on exactly what happened. So, and it was none of my business. So,
yeah, but it also happened to a fellow referee, and you do take interest in it, just like any of us would do the same thing if something happened like that to one of us. But I don't recall ever seeing something like that in one of the 4 professional sports, to be very honest with you. That was brutal. And
yeah.
To this, I actually, before I was downstairs, I brought it up again just because I couldn't remember the player's name, and I wanted to ask you that question. So I watched it again this morning. So, and every time I do, I just shake my head.
Yeah, I remember.
What's really ironic is 2 weeks ago, no, I for 4 seasons I was an assistant coach for the University of Guelph women's varsity hockey team, and we had a line that there was three girls that played on that team that were just absolute amazing. There's a lot of amazing kids, but in particular, there's one line that we pretty much started together. And she graduated from Guelph and she went down to play at St. Lawrence University. So my wife and I went down to watch her because my wife just loved the way she played, and the family's great people. And the assistant coach for the St. Lawrence University Saints women's team is the sister of Pete McDougall, who's an NHL referee. So we went down there and they played Ohio State, and I looked and I'm like, oh, the assistant coach is James Wisniewski. Well, for a brief minute, I was thinking that's James Wisniewski. That's the guy that hit Donnie Henderson, but no, it wasn't. It was Weidman. And I mean, it's just that brief second of, you don't think about things for 10 years, all of a sudden but I talked to James after because I do some work for the PWHL, and I just said, hey, hey, how's it going? And the PWHL Professional Women's Hockey League, they're always looking for new talented officials, and a lot of them come from the playing ranks. And tell your girls that if they don't make it on as a professional player. And after watching the first game, I did talk to the players. They're at the same breakfast nook we were, and I made a comment that, hey, there's a couple girls I watched yesterday that they make great officials, and then I watched the girl the second game, and she was dominant. I'm like, she's not going to PWHL as an official; she's going as a player. But yeah, so I mistakenly took James as being Dennis Weidman, but I didn't say it to him. It's just like I thought it for a second, and then after that, I was like, no, we talked. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't you, but it was. Again, because there is so much litigation, I don't think that we were kept abreast of what's going on because there was lawsuits going back and forth about it. So
Hey,
not
Scott,
that I didn't care. I did care a lot.
Scott, you mentioned your wife, and on a scale of 1 to 10, Colleen is a 12.79.
Yeah.
Now, you are maybe a 0.042. How'd you guys meet?
Well, ironically, we both went to the very same small university, a place called Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario. And she played varsity basketball and I played varsity hockey. And it was a small campus. We had 5,000 undergrad students, and I had seen her around campus quite a bit, but I just didn't have the gumption to talk to her. And one particular evening, we won the Ontario University championships, the Laurier men's Golden Hawks. And I even took a cross check in the mouth. I still have the scar. And we were talking at the bar. And basically, I was talking to a gentleman that I was in class with, and he introduced me to Colleen, and sparks flew, and that was it. So she still says to herself, what was I thinking? Why did I go out that night? But no, 32 years on, she's an amazing woman. And I'm definitely out kicking my coverage for sure.
That's
no question.
That's just called marrying up. That's all that is. Bob Davidson knows all about that. So I mean, it's
so do I. I mean,
absolutely. We all did. Did. Even Dale.
Well,
Dale's even.
All right. That's all right. Mike doesn't watch these, so everything's good.
Actually told me that, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but Bob Davidson and I were talking, I don't know, this is quite a while ago. And Bob, tell me about Bob Davidson on how you told me about that. Scott is really involved in World War II history and stuff like that. And you're the one that told me about it. So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. Scott, whose nickname is Cubby, Cubby goes to Normandy every year, and he's kind of runs a tour. Am I correct, Cubby? I mean, that's
you're correct, but yeah, it's a 7-person tour, and I'm number 8, and I drive the van and I rent the vehicle and I talk for a week straight. But yeah, it's a tour,
which I'm sure you have no problem. I've noticed. So.
Bob talks for a week straight in his tour of the backyard with nobody there.
That's right.
Except the bears and the coyotes.
Exactly right. Scotty, going back to linesmen breaking up fights and just a frozen hockey puck going 1,000 miles an hour, all doing all night. I mean, injuries have to be a big part of being an official in hockey. There's no place to hide. You're up against the boards. You can't get out of the way. I mean, did you have any serious injuries, or where you missed a huge amount of time, or how did all that play out?
I was pretty fortunate. I didn't have any real major issues. The only issues towards the end was my mobility, and like in 2007, 2008, I had my first arthroscopic knee surgery for arthritis, and arthritis doesn't go away.
Nope.
So that was more of the just maintenance for the last 14 years, making sure that I kept my knees iced and whatnot. Ironically, that probably the only two injuries that knocked me out of a hockey game were both lacerations to my hand, and it was the same finger, same hand. It was my ring finger on my left hand was cut by a skate blade breaking up a fight, and it went right down to the bone. Basically, the tendon was severed. However, like your tendon on your knuckles, it fans out, it webs out. So I went off the ice, and I worked the rest of the period, and then I went off, and there happened to be a hand surgeon at the game who was on call for the Islanders. And he said, "Yeah, we need to sew your tendon back together." And it was like taking a shoestring, cutting it in half, and then sewing it back together. But that was the first one. I only missed a couple games. They put me in a splint, and the other one was happened in Detroit. I had my finger just hanging over the boards, and it's this finger right here, and it was just crushed. A guy went to make a body check and missed, and he hit my finger, and it was just like kind of like Fred Flintstone taking a grape and smashing it, and my thumb my finger the whole way home was wow 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 wow.
Oh,
But I
Well,
that
that's
was it.
six. That's 6 weeks for us.
Wow, that was literally two games. I was able to get a splint again made, and I continue working, and it is what it is, right?
well,
So
Ouch.
we had guys that the trainers say, yeah, I would say 2 to 6 weeks, and our guys would say, I'll take the 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I remember
so-
I remember working with Dale, and I had the misfortune to be at second base when he had the plate, and I and I can remember a couple shots where one you got hit in the speed bag, and then you had to come out like in the first inning. Why couldn't you hang on to the
It's a
seventh?
veteran move, Bob. That's a veteran move.
Yeah, I mean that was, but
That puts speed bag in a whole new connotation right there.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I learned something. My goal is to learn something new every single day, and it's not even 11 o'clock, and I've already learned something new.
It's no filter, Bob. I mean, come on, you know.
We had Scott. We had a podcast with Bob. We had to incorporate a 10-second delay, just just because
We recorded 60 minutes, and we could only use 20.
It's the high grade.
you do not need to explain that to me. But I love Bob. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the Professional Women's Hockey League had their training camp out in Denver, and I was flown out. I did some helped them out with a little bit of lines people issues and on ice sessions. And I work in their central situation room. I help out when goals are scored to determine whether or not they were done legally or not legally. And anyways, they had tickets for the game. So Bob graciously took one of the free tickets that I offered to go to the hockey game and wore my jersey. And it was awesome. He got to meet a lot of the officials, but we went in to see the on ice officials for the NHL working the game. And Steve Kazari was working, and Cozy had just called too many men on the ice. So true to Bob's form, he walked in. He goes, "Hey, Cozy, I've known you a long time. I didn't know you could count to 5."
Oh,
It just
isn't his
never.
when he goes to a hockey game? Aren't Bob's seats actually in the penalty box? I mean,
Hey, Bob actually he volunteered. He wanted to be an off ice official in Denver, and I was trumpeting for him because he said he loved Billy McCreary. He just absolutely thought Billy McCreary was the cat's meow, and he would said, "Billy, I want to be in the penalty box. When some guy drops some F-bombs about you, I'm going to open the door and I'm going to yell at you to come over here, and I'm going to tell you exactly what he said, and I want to see you throw him out." So,
and that's why he didn't get hired to.
That's pretty much why they would not give Bob the job. So
I used to make fun of McCreary's hair. I mean, he was just had the, just a cute hairdo.
Yeah,
Kind of
you would go up to people in a drinking establishment and say, "Doesn't his hair look really good for being a rug?" Billy would be laughing away. And the first night I met Bob, it was after a playoff game in Anaheim, and he had worked with Fonzie in an Angels game and Andy Fletcher. So we showed up at a drinking establishment, and we brought pucks just like you bring balls for us. And Bob's out in the middle of the dance floor with the hockey puck trying to drop the puck in a salsa bar. And it was a sight to behold. It was really, really a sight to behold. So
I can imagine that. Now, Scott, for us, when we retire, I don't know, I kind of know these guys pretty well. But we're not real active going, back to baseball and stuff like that. And when you retired, I was thinking about this morning. When you retired, do you, I don't know how to put it. For us, it was 5 o'clock. I don't miss 5 o'clock. That was the time you had to be downstairs and you were leaving for the ballpark. For you, was it putting back on the skates? And really, do you put the skates on now?
Uh, the one thing I miss the camaraderie of being
Yeah.
around the guys and seeing the guys. And I remember when veteran guys would leave, and for the first couple of years I'd try to stay in touch, and after a while it's just like you get involved in your own life and whatnot. So I miss that part. What I don't miss is the constant training that we had to do. And I'm a big guy. I tried my best, and they would say you have to come in shape this year, and I go, well, round's a shape. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. The 2 or 3 hour workouts a day just for me to come in at fighting weight. I do not miss that. Now I work out at my own leisure. Sometimes I talk myself out of actually going to the gym, like I think I'm going to today. But
Perfect.
I really don't miss that. I don't miss the travel either. I think after 28 years and 4,000 nights in a married hotel room and a million miles on Air Canada, I'm a house mouse. And now I don't like to travel that much. I like to be able to go to the amateur events around here. I like to be able to be in my children's lives almost on a daily basis, even whether or not they want me there. And that's what I really like. I was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I was done. I'd given it everything I could, and it's a meat grinder. Everyone's like, "Oh, what a great career," but they don't understand. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, even mentally, throughout your career, and I do not miss that a single bit.
No, it's
Yeah.
a good parallel for the way we are too. I mean, that's exactly, you put it in great words. That's exactly how I would put it too, because that's the camaraderie I really miss, and that's why we enjoy this. But the camaraderie I miss, but I tell you what, running to the airport and doing that kind of stuff, checking in the hotels, you can take that and in a bag and throw it. So I agree with you. So
Well, I have
You
a
know,
lot of friends that are musicians and in major rock bands and tour. And they've told me they're like, everybody thinks it's a great life. You're playing and your parties and stuff, and they go, it's not, especially now. It's like, just like you guys said, it's tiring. You're sick of the different hotel every night. You're sick of planes, buses, whatever. It's a grind. It's just like being an official, it's a major grind.
well,
And
look at Davidson, look what travel does to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You look at Cubby. In hockey, they don't have 3 game series in Anaheim. Where we could go to
no,
a hotel and go to the Hyatt or whatever, and we're there for 3 nights. Where in hockey, you're there 1 game and you got to get up in the morning and go somewhere else. So I
yeah.
mean, I think
Well,
the travel is a lot tougher.
on that vein too, you're traveling in the winter, so you can have some brutal weather. We get thunderstorms once in a while or something that would screw us up, but and NBA guys I know the same thing. The traveling in the winter can be a challenge at times. Did you have any weird, wild stories from trying to get to a game in the middle of a snowbank or anything?
They obviously with the advent of that internet thing and being able to predict storms and whatnot. One time late in my career, I was called by the travel agency and they said, "Look, there's a front coming into Dallas. It's going to head over to Nashville in the Midwest, and you have a game. The guys that are working in Nashville with you, they've already booked their flights. They're coming in a day early. We think you should do the same thing." And for me to say no and then not make the game, I probably wouldn't have a leg to stand on. So I said, all right. And then they called back and said, sorry, all the flights into Nashville are canceled today. Maybe you can get there another way. And I said, well, maybe I could fly to Atlanta because Atlanta's close enough where I could drive over. So she put me on, I think like an 11 o'clock flight out of Toronto. I landed at midnight or 12:30, picked up the best rental car I could get with the best tires. Started out the next morning at 6 a.m. and it was normally a 3 hour drive, but it's going through the mountains. There's a little bit of drizzle. And I literally got to Nashville at noon. And I was watching the thermometers going like, 8 degrees, 7 degrees, 6 degrees, 5 degrees, 4. Oh, we're getting close to zero. That's freezing rain. That's snow. It's going to be pain. I did make it to Nashville, but they had shut almost everything down. Their rental cars. I had to drop it off at the airport and grab a cab, and they said, "Well, we have to double up because there's not enough people." And I end up standing in line. This lady was there, and I said, "You mind if we double up and go downtown?" She's absolutely not. And I said, "By the way, where'd you come in from?" She goes, "Toronto." And I go, "Oh, were you on the 10 o'clock?" She goes, "Yeah." So the flight I was originally on, it made it on time, and I left a day early, and I got there the exact same time. So I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" But yeah.
And I don't understand why we don't miss that.
Exactly. So one of the like, we didn't have trunks either that were sent around. This is actually one of the funniest stories. We had a referee bag that it's a Briggs and Riley. It's like a $650 value bag, and we get one every 4 years. And they were supposed to withstand anything. Well, they didn't withstand the airport in Nashville one day, because I went to pick up my bag one time, and I honestly thought Bruce, the shark from Jaws, had taken a chunk out of it. It was like missing a big section of it. So I went into the lady at the ticket office or baggage office. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, I think there's something wrong here with my luggage." And she goes, "Oh my goodness, it looks like it's been drugged." And I go, "What?" She goes, "It was drugged." And I go, "What do you mean it was drugged?" She goes, "It was drugged, like behind the tractor. It was." And I go, "You mean dragged?" "Yeah, it was dragged." I'm like, anyway, so they promptly issued me a check and gave me a couple like bags that were nowhere near like my Briggs and Riley, but I brought those bags home, and my wife still uses them every time we go on a trip. She puts them in these cheap Southwest airline duffel bags, and I'm like, "Oh my god, like, this is the best story. You could be using a Briggs and Riley $650 bag, and you choose to use something that Southwest Airlines gave me because my bag was drugged." But I drove a lot. Like, I lived in an area where I could drive Toronto, Buffalo, Detroit, even Montreal, Ottawa were quick drives for me. You know, by the time you check in the airport and you fly, you land, you get your cab, your bags.
Yeah.
But if they did a road trip the proper way, like Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Columbus, they're all kind of in a little box there. And every now and then I'd venture a little bit further on. I might even do a drive to Chicago type thing. And I always said, whenever I drove my car, I never once lost my luggage, and I was never delayed, although I might have to ride out a snowstorm. But then they paid us mileage. It was a pretty good mileage check. Being an NHL linesman, I wanted to supplement my income because the referees, like, they made all the money. And
Well, they got it. That's for all that moose and stuff they use.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, you're right. So
Hey, Cubby, there's one question I really wanted to ask you. Like Mark Jackson's retired referee. He's from Montreal. He lives in Denver.
Dave Jackson?
Dave Jackson, excuse me. Yeah, Dave Jackson. What transpires, or do they invite guys to move or inquire, "Hey, do you want to move to Nashville or Atlanta or whatever?"
Ironically, it's kind of there's two types of situations. Sometimes there's guys just want to move on for personal reasons, whether they have family or friends or something, where they just want to try a new location. In the National Hockey League, if you lived in Canada, you got paid in Canadian. If you lived in the US, you got paid in the US. So it was a financial benefit for people to move to the US. The other thing is the league wanted to have people in every city, and when they hire a young guy, they tell them there's a good chance you're going to move. Like, if they hire a guy from southwestern Ontario where they already have enough guys, they may say, "You're moving here, you're moving there," and that's part of the contract, and they have to move. I thought about moving once in my career. It was I thought I'd move to Columbus. It's only 6 hours from home, and I was working a game in Buffalo. My mom collapsed that night. I was called off the ice. I drove home, and she was pronounced dead the next morning. But a young referee in this area, linesman Dave Briscoll, he came with his girlfriend, and they looked after our two young kids at the time for 2 days. And my wife said, "Moving for money is not a reason to move." And again, she was right. Like, in 32 years, I was just hoping maybe once I could be right. I was almost. She was incorrect once, but she's never been wrong.
Well,
exactly.
We've been there.
Yeah. So
my pat answer here is, I'll be right one of these days.
Yeah. Well,
and it pisses her off.
My wife wanted me to move, but
yeah, she was going to pay you too.
I picture you, Robert, like no offense meant, Bob. You kind of remind me of Rodney Dangerfield. Like, well, my wife kept moving, but I kept finding her.
That's right.
Yeah, but is his doctor Dr. Vinny Boom Bots? That's the key. I mean,
Bob, you're a beauty.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question for you, Scott. I'm a stadium and arena historian. I've been doing it for 50 years. Give me a couple of your favorite arenas and ones you just went, oh shit, what we're here again. What are some of your favorite ones that you refereed in?
Well, I came up, obviously, I'm a Southern Ontario kid. So to say that Maple Leaf Gardens wasn't a treat to work in, the Carlton Cash Box, as they call it,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Now, when I got hired by the NHL, I didn't work my first game in Toronto. So I was hired in August. I started in September. I didn't work my first Toronto game until February. But
Right.
it was really cool. My parents went to the game. My wife went to the game. It was really, really like, oh my goodness, I'm at Maple Leaf Gardens. This is the Mecca. This is the capital place. But my first couple of years, there were so many old arenas that were transitioned out. So, like Chicago Stadium, the Montreal Forum, the Boston Garden. Boston's where I worked my first NHL game. Like 2 or 3 years later, it was gone. And I just look back and I'm so grateful that I was able to work in some of those amazing places, especially the original six places.
Oh yeah.
And, even late in my career, my favorite arena, bar none, and it's for several reasons, is the New York Ranger, like Madison Square Garden, and a lot of it has to do with the city itself. I met so many people down there that were just amazing people. We had, like you, we have security in every city, and they're not just security; they're friends. These are people that, if something ever hit the fan, like when my mom died. It was the Buffalo Sabres security rep that had to come and call me off the ice and send me home. And he's never forgot that. I've never forgot that. I just saw him last week, and he's just an amazing man, Frank Henry. But everywhere we went, there was just so many amazing people we met, and I just love the city of New York. I worked I worked the first game there after 9/11. I remember it like yesterday. Christopher Reeve used to sit in his chair where the Zamboni came on and off, and the Rangers won in overtime. And I picked up the game-winning puck, and going off, I handed it to his wife Dana and just said, your husband's such an inspiration to everybody. I think you should have this. And they came in the room to thank us, and just the whole city itself. Our security rep there, he was a detective in the DA squad, and he ran the morgue after 9/11. So he was able to get us down like right front and center of the 9/11 memorial site. And yeah, he just the first day I went down there, we walked, myself and two of my colleagues walked from Midtown, and it was in late September, early October, and there was everywhere you went, there was fire stations where they'd lost everybody, and all the memorials and whatnot. And I guess like the city of New York is a place. I took my wife back last year just to watch a Las Vegas Aces versus New York Liberty game, and I took my son Ryan, who some of you have met. He's a 28-year-old, and he loves baseball, and he umpired until an illness prevented him. But we went on a road trip this year. We flew to Baltimore to watch the Jays. First inning, we wore our Jay stuff. By the end of the game, we were wearing Baltimore stuff. And we took the train up to New York. And again, first inning, we were in Jay stuff. By the end of it, we were wearing Yankee stuff. But I just love the city of New York. And there's my last year, my daughter, who's a 26-year-old police officer now, she said, "Dad, you've never taken me on the road." I go, "Well, it's just something about taking your daughter on a road trip." And she's like, "Dad." So I took her to New York. It ended up being my last time in New York, and the Leafs played, and she's a big Leaf fan. So I was standing there waving her at a commercial timeout, and Austin Matthews came up and he goes, "Hey, who are you waving to, Driscoll?" I go, "My daughter. She came on the road trip here." And he goes, "Oh, that's so cute." But she's a great kid, and I'm very proud of her. Again, she's protecting and serving our community. And it's just kind of funny. I had her on the trip. We went to see Book of Mormon, which is like right up Bob's alley. Have you seen it, Bob?
Oh yeah, it's good.
Unbelievable, right? So
Yeah.
Ryan and I went to see it this year when we went to New York on the baseball trip, and again, like those are some of the places that I really, really, really liked.
Yeah,
Let's talk about Devin.
I'm surprised we didn't cross paths because Dale and I had that World Series, and
After 9/11.
Okay.
that was amazing. And like you said,
Yeah.
fortunately and unfortunately, my family and Dana Demue's family, we actually got to go right to ground zero, and I know exactly how if that place. I'm not saying it was an inspiration at the time, but it definitely changed our lives, and just seeing that
Yeah.
destruction and stuff, and but being part of that was awesome. Being in New York for the World Series and stuff like that was
Yeah.
awesome. So
Like, correct me if
I
I'm
know what you
wrong.
mean about that.
You met President Bush too, didn't you? Like, didn't President
Ye-
Bush come in the room
He
and
he threw
Oh
out the
yeah,
first pitch, game three, the first game at Yankee Stadium, and that was an incredible. that whole thing was an incredible evening. In my book, I read a whole thing about it. Jimmy, you and I were the first two guys in the locker room hours before first pitch,
Right.
and here's sitting some guy, and we find out it's the Secret Service guy who's going to be wearing our uniform over his bulletproof vest and gun and handcuffs and taser and everything else.
Grenades.
Enrico Palazzo. That's who it was. It was Enrico Palazzo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was there. I had a video camera with me, and I documented the whole damn thing. And
Mhm.
it was,
Very cool.
and the guy's name was the Secret Service guy's name was Ray, and he says, "Don't take too many pictures of me. They're not supposed to know about this stuff."
Yeah, no, I get it. So
Yep.
I actually the other New York story I have is my last Stanley Cup Finals was New York, LA in 2014, and in game 2 or 3 of the conference finals, there was an incident where I ended up being punched by Daniel Carcillo, and we assessed him a 10-game misconduct, and they appealed it and they knocked it down to 6. But it was again, I knew I was getting long in the tooth. My mobility was leaving me. I figured it was my last kick at the cat, and Colleen and the 3 kids all came down to New York. I had game 3, and when they came down, I think our ticket, we didn't get free tickets, but my tickets were $650 each, and I gave them to my wife, and I said, by the way, they're going for $2,000 each on the street. And she looked at me, she goes, I have $8,000 worth of tickets in my hand. Why the hell are we going to watch you? And I said, because this will be my last finals. And yeah, so that's
How many finals did you have?
I worked 3 finals. Yeah. So
And when do you find that out? Is it after the conference?
yeah,
I mean, it's right before it happens, right?
pretty much. So after game 7, and nobody knows when exactly, but after game 7, they send out an email, and I kind of knew I was working the finals that year because I did game 7 of the Chicago LA finals. And if you work in game 7, unless you really, really, really like pull a Harvey and have your first shit of the day, you're not. That's Bob's grandson. I don't know if you can keep that in or not, but
We
no,
keep all of it in.
you typically know that you're working the finals then. So
And when you work the finals, you're not working all the games. You're just working certain games.
no, you typically work every other game. They kind of put you as a crew. Now, back to this story of me being a D-Day tour guide. I had booked a D-Day trip with a bunch of friends on for the 70th anniversary of D-Day, which was going to be in 2014. And unfortunately, I planned the trip and I didn't make it because I worked the finals. So that's a good reason not to be going on the trip.
Right,
I think
right.
Davidson. I think you told me that, Bob. Davidson told me that. I remember that's how we got talking about it.
Yeah. People always, I was lucky to get 1 World Series. People always ask me, hey, how come you only got 1 World Series? And I said, well, because Scott and Joyce had to have 3 and 4, and Crawford 6, and Joe West 6, and Montague 6. I was lucky I got 1.
Yeah, I look back and I was lucky to work 3, and I really wish I had worked more, but that wasn't in the cards, and I can't sit there and stew about it. I need to get on with my life, and so be it. At the end of the day, my wife, who's a very, very wise person, she says, when we bury you, we're not going to write how many finals you worked and how many playoff games you worked. Just be remembered as a good guy and a good father. And I went, again, you're right, again.
Well, they're just going to put me in a mayonnaise jar when I'm done. So,
Well, I'll go up to your tombstone, Cubby, and I'll write it in there. Only three finals. How many Rooney had?
Only 3. What a shame.
Hey, when I go, I just want somebody to put a parking meter on my grave and have expired on it. I mean, come on. I mean,
There you go. That's perfect. That's
Hey, when you go, I want Fenway, Bob.
He's on his bed right now, Bobby. He's sound asleep. So we
Well,
got
this is so riveting that he fell asleep. Is that what you're trying to say? I mean,
Hey, Cubby, talk about you have a son, Devin, who is getting into officiating.
Yeah, I do. So we have 3 kids. My oldest, Ryan, he works in the farm industry here in Guelph. Great kid. He used to umpire baseball. Loves you, Bob. You're like his favorite person in the world.
Well, a smart, very smart kid too.
Yeah, no. So, and then Danielle, police officer here in Guelph. She's a former basketball player herself. And then my youngest, our youngest, Devin, he's 24, and after a few years of like trying to break into the Ontario Hockey Association, and which is again junior B, junior C, it was tough, and it's a long story, but we don't have enough time to talk about that. But he's a big, strong kid. He's tall, he's lean, he's not like me, and he's cracked the OHL, which is an Ontario Hockey League. He's cracked their lineup as a lines person this year, and he worked his first game a week ago yesterday up in Owen Sound. And Dale Hunter coaches the London Knights, so I talked to Dale after. I went, "Hey Dale, like, did you know that was my kid out there?" And Dale goes, "Oh yeah, he's actually better than you are," and of course he's right. And no, Devin's he's a high school math teacher here in Guelph. He does it on the side. I don't know if he has any aspirations to go pro, and we all know that it's the people above you that they decide your fate. There's nothing you can do. So he's been identified as an up and coming promising official, and he's got a really good demeanor. He's not like a mouthpiece like me, and yeah, no, I wish him well. And I'm very proud of him, but I'm also proud because he's a high school math teacher, and I have my teaching degree. My wife was a teacher, so kind of follow along in our footpaths.
Dale, you mentioned Dale Hunter. Is that the same Dale Hunter that was the how can I put this?
Enforcer for the Capitals.
Well, he wasn't an
Yeah,
enforcer.
thank you, Bob.
No, Dale wasn't an enforcer. Dale's not, like, his stature's not very big. Dale never knew the word quit. And he would stick you, he would cross check you, he would run you, he would do whatever he could to win. And he was like one of the most penalized persons in NHL history. But he's also like a really nice guy. He runs a very successful OHL franchise, the London Knights. They are perennial OHL champions, or Memorial Cup finalists and whatnot. But I have a scar right between my eyes. I dropped the puck one night, and he got me with a high stick, and I got 12 stitches. And I remind him that the other day. I go, "Hey Dale, remember when you cut me between the eyes?" And he goes, "I don't remember. That wasn't me. That wasn't me." But he was also funny. Like, Dale's remembered for hitting Pierre Turgeon in
Oh,
the
yeah.
1993 playoffs after he'd scored a goal. Pierre scored a goal, and Dale hit him. It was a blindside dirty hit. And Commissioner Bettman, his first ruling as commissioner, to suspend him for 21 games, which is a quarter of the season. So at the time, Dale was making, I believe, $600,000. He forfeited $150,000 in salary. Well, a couple of years later, there was a hit very similar to that, in a game we worked. And Dale came up to myself and the other guys in the crew. He goes, "I did that. I got 21 games." Like, he made light of it, but he was a competitor. He was a fierce competitor.
I think
And
I've seen both of those hits, and they're
oh
both
yeah,
nasty.
yeah, no, they are. And like, but if you want a guy to win, Dale Hunter's the guy you want. Like, he gave it until he could, and he wasn't a very big man, but man, he had no quit in him. So,
He was kind of like the Rat, Ken Linsman. Kenny Linsman was
well,
the same way.
I don't think anything like the Rat was the Rat. Like, okay, Kenny Linsman. The only time Kenny Linsman would hit you was he made sure he had a stick in his hand, like he was cross checking you or slashing you or something. Dale, he would drop the gloves. Like, Dale would body check you. I was talking to a friend of mine, his brother. So a guy who grew up with Dave McElwain. He played in the NHL, and I saw his brother last night at the junior game I was supervising, and we brought up Dale's name, and he said Dale Hunter hit Dave blindside when he came out of the penalty box because he didn't know he was there. And now that would be a predatory hit. He gets suspended, but he hit him so hard. Dave said he'd never been hit that hard in his life. So,
I've been on the field for football games, and I thought these guys get hard. But if you watch a hockey game, I mean, how these guys get up after some of these checks and hits, it's like, geez, every bone in your body hurts just watching these guys get slammed, and they just pop right back up and skate like it's nothing, you know.
yeah. Well,
Hey, Scott.
unfortunately, they always don't jump right back up because
Well,
I said how I watched Dave get hit in the end boards one night. He beat a guy on the ice. He touched the puck. Yeah, he won the race, but the guy drilled him, and he hit him so hard, Dave's head hit the boards, and he was out cold before he even hit the ice. Like, he just fell. He slumped to the ice, and he was my best friend growing up, and he had like a 12 cut laceration over his eye, and unfortunately, it was a legal hit back in then. Like,
Yeah.
if you touch the puck, you're fair game, and sadly, these things happen. So sorry, I interrupted somebody.
No, that was just going to ask you because relating to that, is Marchand a shit?
No, he, like, Brad, he's misunderstood, right? Like, again,
Okay.
he is a fierce competitor.
There we go.
So was Von Hayes.
Like-
He was
like-
misunderstood.
The stuff that comes out of his mouth, I really wish I could share with you because it's just so funny. He gets things on people, and he has a lisp, and I'm not going to imitate it, but it's kind of annoying to people he's yelling at. But again, if you're building a team, you want a champion, Brad Marchand's going to be your starting left winger. He knows how to win. So
talk about the rat.
well, I really don't like, I don't know the rat as much as I know Brad.
You see certain things. I was actually watching the game the one night, and I can't remember who it was with when the line ended up to drop the puck, on offsides or something like that. And the guy next to him, the player next to him, just had a stick on the ice, and Marchand just raises his right skate and just crushes his stick. Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm sorry, that's wrong. But see, I see that and I have a different feeling about it. And I can say the same thing about some players too. Like if you ask me about some players, I could probably say the same thing. So
yeah, I think with Brad, and again, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I've talked to enough psychotherapists in my day to know. I think Brad, he's just so competitive. He doesn't think about his actions. He just does it. And he's like, okay, this guy's annoying me. I'm going to break his stick. And he does it. He's like, what? Kind of like when he licked the guy one night. Like he actually licked the guy when they were done a fight. He leaned over and gave him a big tongue lick. And it's like, that is so disgusting and gross. But he did it. And you're like going, what would possess you? Like, I couldn't even lay awake at night thinking, how am I going to get to my enemy, like psychologically, and come up with, I'm going to lick his face. So.
When the season starts, Davidson and I talk about this all the time. We talk about Boston, and we talk about Toronto and his team, the Avalanche, and stuff like that. And Marchand always comes up. So
yeah, I think Marchand scored a goal here last night. Boston
did he really?
Colorado 5-3. Poor officiating.
It's funny though. There's we've all had it. The players that are exceptional players, pitchers, fielders, whatever, hitters, and the persona of them on camera and what fans see is really nice and stuff, but they just are not nice people.
Dale, that's what brings up
Paul O'Neill.
Paul O'Neill is the guy. Dale, I wanted to ask you who, in your opinion, during your career, was your favorite player, and then your least favorite?
Well, I think my least favorite was Clemens, because I've got a whole story on that. But the favorite, I mean, there was a lot of decent guys. They just went out and played, and they were good guys. I mean, I think. You remember Sal Fasano? Was it Fasano, the catcher?
Yeah.
I love Sal. I mean, he didn't get a lot of playing time. He wasn't a big superstar, but he was a big guy, and he caught you. I don't think there was a better catcher at letting you see the pitch and stuff. But he also, if he disagreed or whatever, it was a conversation and not a, shove it up your rear end type situation, but there's a lot of, I could put in that category or a category of, decent guys. I think there's quite a few. It's the ones that stand out are the ones that are just a thorn, or that you just never got along with. And man,
well, we probably all
that could be another podcast. I could list all those.
Right. And Scott probably has the same, and I know Bob Davidson does, and probably Bob Busser probably has met people in his industry that are the same way.
Oh, yeah.
People that were not really likable on the job, but then afterwards, like we talk about Paul O'Neill. I was working I think it was the 94 not World Series, but the All-Star game. And my family was with me. We got on an elevator to go down, and the door opens and Paul O'Neill's standing there. And I went, "Oh, you got to be kidding me." He was the nicest guy that I've ever seen off the field. He was awesome. On the field,
well, Paul O'Neill, it's so funny because when he would come his first at bat, he would always say hello.
Yes.
And that was the best conversation you're going to have with him that entire day.
Yes. So goodbye.
I mean, once he always, every at bat, at least, let's see, at the first pitch, every at bat, he would question a strike call. And, and I remember one time he fouled the ball off. He goes, "Was that a good pitch?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "No, it wasn't." I said, "Jesus God, I said, yes, you fouled it." But my favorite story is I had a Saturday afternoon game in Cleveland. The Yankees were there, and I was behind the plate. He didn't say anything. The next day I'm at third. Sunday getaway. There was a change of pitchers. He happened to be the base runner, and he looks back and he goes, "Hey, Dale." I go, "Hey, Paul." I said, "By the way, hell is frozen over." And he said, "What?" And I go, I'm pretty sure hell is frozen over. I said, "I had the plate yesterday, and you never questioned me on a pitch." And he looked and he goes, "My God, I think you're right. I think hell has frozen over."
Jimmy, you're up. Who was your favorite and your least favorite?
My favorite player was definitely Ken Griffey Jr. I think Jr. was the epitome of Major League Baseball. He always had a smile on his face. Very rarely had
Good call.
anything
That's a good
nasty
one.
to
Yeah.
say, even though he was my first ejection. And O'Neill's up there because I had, like Dale, I had O'Neill's last at bat in the regular season in Yankee Stadium. His last at bat before he retired. You know, everybody was calling him the Warrior and everything. And he came up to the plate and I said, Paul, congratulations on a great career. He says, thank you, Jimmy. I really, really appreciate that. And the next pitch, I went strike one. And all of a sudden he turned around. He says, that pitch is fucked outside. I said, I take back everything I just said.
Did you go strike one or did you go?
What about you?
Well, my favorite was John Olerud.
Yeah.
I mean, he wouldn't say boo or poop if he had a mouthful of it.
Right.
And my least favorite, I got to put O'Neill there and Von Hayes.
Ooh.
Oh, Von Hayes never practiced fine Christian fellowship on the field. That's for sure.
What about you, Scott?
Well, you
Are you
put me
willing
on
to
the,
answer this?
No, well, I guess I could. I want to tell a story. Well, Jason Spezza, bar none, because I had a call one night, and it was in the playoffs, and I was surrounded by Ottawa Senators, and they're going blah blah blah, and they go, "You better look at that when you get home." I go, "I'm not looking at it." I go, "I'm busy. I get home, I got to do laundry, I got to cook, clean, run the kids to sports." So about a week later, I had another close call, and didn't say nothing was said, and between periods came out for the next period, and Spezza came out and he goes, "Hey, Drisk, just want to let you know that you made the right call there." I go, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate it." He goes, "No, because when you get home, you got to cook and clean and run the kids around." I get it. And I just laughed my ass off, but I did say, "Hey, seriously, I what part of the laundry I have to do is when I worked the finals here last year, the kids all got to buy a t-shirt. My one son bought his Spezza t-shirt, and every freaking road trip I go on, when I get home, I have to wash that shirt." So he started sending sticks and stuff home for Devin and created a real friendship. And just like he would ask, and when I told him Devin was officiating, he wrote on a stick, to Devin, "There's no doubt in my mind you'll be the best official in the Driscoll family." So he was a classy guy. The other guys, I'll tell you a story about a guy how we buried the hatchet towards the end of my career, and it was Eric Carlson that played for Ottawa. Whenever I waved an icing off and he went back and he didn't think it was, he skated by me and he would drop F bombs and MFs and just like, "Are you kidding me?" And I give it back to him because he was a great offensive player, but defensively I've never seen that many giveaways since I watched Let's Make a Deal. And the one night he came up to me, there was an icing, and he picked the puck up and he handed it to me. And I looked at him, I said, "Oh my God." He goes, "What?" I go, "Of all the people in the league that would hand me the puck, I'm shocked that you would do it." He goes, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah." I go, "You know what? Tonight, I'm going to give you one free, you can come up and you can call me an MFer once tonight." He goes, "Free?" I go, "Yeah." So he never did, right? And after that, he kept picking them up, and he go, "Are these accumulated? Like, can I do like 5 one night and 4 the next night?" And I'm at 9. I go, no, they expire at the end of the game. And yeah, they accumulate though. You could get 4 or 5 in a game. And after that, like, we had a newfound sense of respect and kind of giggle. Well, he gets traded to San Jose, and probably the second biggest prick on D was Vlasic that played for San Jose. And one night he came up to me at a commercial timeout. He handed me the puck. He goes, "I understand that there's a puck for mother effing exchange." And I look at Carlson, I go, "Hey, that's just you and me." But again, it just kind of broke the ice. And
Yeah.
I kind of like to joke around out there. But if people were again pissing in my ear, telling me it's raining, I would get my back up. But
It's like on ice currency.
it was like, but they never cashed it in. They almost all of a sudden saw me as a human being. So the worst coach that he was a great guy. He had the biggest heart in the world, but he hated officials was Pat Quinn. Because in the 1980 Stanley Cup Finals, there was a missed call in Game 6, and he figures that cost him the Stanley Cup. And I had a try with the Vancouver Canucks in 1990. He was the GM, and he loved me. "Hey, kid, keep it up. Good luck refereeing." And I get hired in 92. And he was the GM. He'd come in the room and say hi to me. Well, he became the coach in Toronto, and he just yelled at me from the time the puck dropped to the time end. He just screamed and yelled at me. It wouldn't even be my call. He'd be yelling at me. And I worked the 2004 All-Star game in Minnesota, and I brought my son Ryan, and my wife came. And anyways, Ryan was a big Leaf fan. He's 8 years old. And I went up to Pat Quinn. I said, "Coach, this is your biggest fan in the world. It's my son." And it just melted him. And he never yelled at me after that. He would send me signed hats and programs for Ryan. There's a picture. Ryan is 28. So this picture is 20 years old. And it's of Ryan with Pat Quinn at the All-Star game on the bench of the skills competition.
Wow.
And he looks like mini Pat, right? And it melts my heart because like that, it took my son Ryan to forge that little deep relationship with Pat Quinn. So
yeah, some of the bad relationships I had on the field, it took me retiring before that actually got better.
I hear you.
The funniest thing, I when I had a whole dugout laughing. I was working a plate in Detroit, and Joe Madden was managing Tampa Bay, and they were ahead 3-0, and we were in the bottom of the ninth, and it was a 1-2 pitch, was right down the middle, and I missed it. I balled it, and Joey stands up on the steps of the dugout. Bobby, where's that pitch? And I turned to him and I said, it was right down the cock. And the whole dugout that you could see, everybody just started. Madden leaned over and started laughing. I mean,
well, Madden can never keep a face. He'd come out and argue, and you'd say something. Jeff Nelson had a play behind the plate where the ball came off the guy's knee, and you couldn't really tell or anything like that. And so Jeff came out. He says, "Jimmy, I just got a feeling the ball hit him, and I'm going to go with foul ball." I said, "Hey, I'm all for that." So Madden comes out. He starts, "You can't do that. You guys know that." I said, Joe, we're going to go with foul ball. He goes, "Well, why are we going to do that?" And I said, "Because sometimes things on this field are just up." He started laughing and turned around and walked away.
Yeah.
Pinella would never laugh and turn around and walk away. He might laugh when he got in a tunnel, but
I had the entire Marlins dugout, their first base dugout, in stitches one night when I had top of the 10th, and when they played at the old where the Dolphins play. I don't know what that's another stadium. It changes names about every other day. Yeah. Anyway, remember, was it Wes Helms for Milwaukee? Nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
It came up. It was a question of, did the ball hit him, or was it a foul ball? I immediately called foul, and they're bringing in the meta helicopter because he broke his wrist or something. But I've no replay. I got foul, and so they bring it. A new hitter, and after the argument in 7, I'm thinking, I probably missed that since he's now in a cast. But so Davey Nelson was the first base coach, right? And we finally get everything settled and everything. We're going to get back going. You get the new hitter in for Wes, and just about ready to go. And I hear, it seemed like right next to me, I hear, "Now, you're freaking horseshit," and I look around, and all I see is Davey Nelson now walking back. He's the first base coach, walking back to the first, with his back to me. And of course, the first base dugout's the Marlins, and Laz Diaz is at first base, umpiring first base. And I go, Davey, turn around! I don't want you to miss this, Davey. and he keeps walking, and he's not going to turn around. And so I'm starting to walk toward him, and Laz goes, he's facing Laz. Laz goes, "He wants to talk to you." Dave goes, "I don't want to talk to him." So he finally gets to the first base coaching box. He turns around, and now I'm at the 45-foot line because I've been following. I go, "Oh, good, now you can see me." Get the the entire Marlins dugout about fell over. They were laughing so hard. And after the game, Rock, our clubhouse guy there, he comes walking in and he goes, "Chief, you had the boys going, Chief." It was a classic.
Well,
Even
your
Davey
second base
Nelson
umpire
a few
was
games later said, that was pretty good.
your second base umpire was standing there kind of going, "Whoa, this is going to be a good one."
Exactly. That was you. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
a cheap shot, Davey. That's a damn cheap shot.
I mean, it's like putting a tip in a tip jar. If they don't see you do it, you've never done it, right? You got to make sure they see you do it. So I said, Davey, you got to see me run, yeah.
Bob
Speaking
Busser,
of,
who in the music industry was your nemesis?
Me?
Busser.
Oh, geez. Actually, most of the people I met, because I'm like with you guys, I understand them, and I will tell you this story, true story. 1984 at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, we had backstage passes for Night Ranger, and Neil Sean is standing there, and he's smoking a doobie. And my buddy goes, "Neil doesn't talk to anybody," and he went like this, and we ended up getting hammered. And if you're oh
There you
we
go.
Dale, we were effed up. I mean, I don't know what the hell he had, but man, I was beyond the moon. I was on Mars. And and I walked back to this room at the Cow Palace, and Greg Raleigh, the keyboard player, was sitting there, and we're talking cowboy boots, and there's this big pile of blow. It looked like Mount Rushmore of cocaine. Guys would come in and cut their lines and do their thing. I never did coke. That wasn't my thing. But the guys accepted me for who I was, and we all got along. I still have a lot of friends that are musicians. I just did a podcast with Hirsch Gardner, the drummer for New England. Great guy. We had dinner together. It's we talk the same language. I can speak music to them, so they really appreciate that. I understand what they're talking about. And I never really. Grace Slick was very nice. I met Grace. She was, and Paul Cantner. They couldn't have been nicer. Craig Chiquiso. I still know Craig to this day. They're great people. They're like athletes. They don't like the fanboys coming on and doing that. I honestly never had a problem with any musician. That's
good.
weird to say, but they were all nice to me.
Scott, how was Scott Bowman?
Scotty was he wasn't thinking about the game he was working. He wasn't thinking about the game next week. He was thinking about the playoffs or the Stanley Cup Finals. And
Really,
he was always planting a seed. Like he was one of the first guys I think really studied the game, studied the analytics, studied other teams, their what they were doing. The funniest thing I remember is two Scotty Bowman stories. Is one time we used to get our skates sharpened by the equipment managers every now and then, and the guy in Detroit, Paul Boyer, is the absolute best in the entire NHL. So I went in there on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas for us Canadians. Had a game in Detroit, and I went and I walked down the room with my skates to get them sharpened. And I knew where the equipment manager's room was, and Scotty Bowman was in there. He was doing something to the skate sharpening machine, and I'm like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Bowman." He's like, "Hey, how was Christmas?" I go, "Good." He goes, "Where are you from?" And I told him C4. He goes, "Ron Mason's from there." I go, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he is." He goes, "You need your skates done?" I was like, "Yeah, are you going to do them?" But he goes, "I'll get Paul to do them." But he's talking to me like I'm a normal person, and he'd already won like 8 or 9 cups by this time. And
yeah.
one time he called Andy McCallum over and he goes, "Andy, I was watching a game last night. It was Chicago Toronto, and on a face-off, and Andy goes, whoa, whoa, whoa." He goes, "Scotty, don't worry about it. I've never worked a Toronto Chicago game. I'm not good enough, and I never will." So he skated away. And Scotty didn't know what to say, but I'm like, "You're watching a game about face-offs?" Because he was worried about get Doug Gilmore cheated or this guy cheated. He's always planting a seed, which was I found very interesting. So
Was that Mason? Was that the head coach at Bowling Green State University
at one time, and then he went to Michigan State University. So he's from my hometown.
They won the NCAA championship when I was at Bowling Green.
Okay, yeah, like Ron Mason's a legend from my hometown, and a lot of people from Seaforth went down to Michigan State University and played hockey, as did Wes McCauley. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, Wes McCauley.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So Wes is a real character.
2 minutes for fighting.
Yeah, he's a beauty. In fact, Wes's name came up the other night. Bob, did you ever run into Tom Cochran in your travels through the music industry? Canadian legend.
I know who Tom Cochran is. I have not run into him yet, but I love his music. I mean, the guy is he's a Canadian legend, and
so he played in Guelph the other night. So my wife and I got tickets, and we went down. And he is a Canadian legend. He sings "Big League," where the kid's going to make it to the big leagues, and he changed the verse, the third verse to he talks about the Humboldt, Saskatchewan bus crash, right? But just a classy guy. So I went in and I paid the VIP fee to meet him after. And I mean, like one VIP meeting another VIP, what's the big deal? He was a great guy. He signed a picture to me, and we talked for like 15, 20 minutes about things. But one of his songs is called Ocean Blue, and it's about people fighting in Normandy for D-Day. And I know he's a very big, staunch Canadian. And I bought a sweatshirt that I'm going to wear on my next D-Day tour, and I'll wear it to the Juno Beach Center. And it's got Tom Cochran and it's got the Highway 1 on it. And he signed it for me. But just a really classy guy. We talked for 15 minutes, but he talked about Wes McCauley. Wes McCauley used to be a caddy for him. And he goes, as a 15-year-old, the kid was full of piss and vinegar because he used to chirp me about my shots all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's Wes. He's not going to keep his mouth shut. But everybody loves Wes. He's got that personality where he's a great guy. The officials like him. Like the players like him, the coaches like him, and we joke that West could go and have a shit in Madison Square Garden like Harvey did today, and they would probably go and say, "Wow, look at the Constitution there! Like it's the perfect fiber, it's the perfect color." And, he's a legend. He's a great man. That
We're
West
definitely
is.
going to have to. This is going to be rated R today.
Yeah,
so.
this podcast has gone to shit. There's no doubt.
I got one more story about humor. When Joe Torre was managing the Yankees. Anyway, we were in, I believe it was Pittsburgh, and we had a rain delay, and now we got back to work, and in right center field, the mat come down from the wall. I mean, it just it just wouldn't stay up, the padding on the right center field wall there. So Torre was getting mad, and this is when they had Larry Bull was coaching third.
There's help.
Real good guy. So Torre said to me, Torre says, "Hey, Bob, can't we get some asshole to stand out there and hold that mat up?" And I said, "Yeah, we could, but who would coach third base for you?"
That's a great story.
My probably the funniest interaction I ever had on the ice with coaches was Claude Julien was my absolute favorite French coach. He's probably the only one that didn't hate me, but he was the fiery French Canadian. And when it was probably my last year, maybe my second last year, he was losing his shit with Justin St. Pierre one night, and they were yelling at each other in French, and they were giving and going back and forth. And about a month later, I'm in Tampa Bay, and now Steve Kazari, Bob's buddy, was working the game, and Cozy makes a call, and he just Claude could not believe the call he made, and he's very like kind of aloof about when he comes by the bench and doesn't really explain anything. He just skates by and says something. So Claude just starts a verbal diatribe that just every other word was an expletive, and I'm standing there between the benches, and I got a big shit-eating grin on my face. He looks at me and he yells at me, he goes, "What are you laughing at?" I said, "Well, I was just curious. Can I ask you a question?" And I was being like, very calm. And he goes, "Sure." And I go, "Who pisses you off more, Steve Kazari or Justin St. Pierre?" And he stops mid-sentence and he goes, "You're serious. You're serious, aren't you?" I go, "Yeah." I go, "I had the game where you lost your shit on Justin, and now you're losing your shit on Cozy. Of the two, which guy pisses you off more?" Well, he goes, "I'll tell you what, I can handle tattoo." And that's what he called Justin, because he looked like Hervé Veshalev from Fantasy Island. I can handle him, but this guy, he just drives me nuts. And now I've got him totally, he's not thinking about the game anymore. He's got a big smirk in his face. He goes, "You're something else." And I go, "I know." And I skated away. But it diffused the situation, but it also was a great story to tell Cozy that Claude hated him, but all good.
Well, humor in officiating was always a diffuser. So
Yeah.
if you were quick enough and you were in a certain, and let's face it, handling situations is all about officiating. If you can do that, you're going to be successful. And I think humor, and we've all used it, and I think it's a great Band-Aid as far as I'm concerned. And the more humor in the game, the better.
Yeah, no. And Mick Magoo, one of our more colorful referees, God rest his soul, one night, it was right before Christmas, and Chris Draper is just like all over him. And he looks at Chris, he goes, "Chris, have you gone out and done your Christmas shopping?" He goes, "Yeah, I have, Mick. Why do you ask?" He goes, "I just wondered, what did you get your wife?" He says, "Well, I went out and I got her diamond bracelet and I got her car." "Well, that's great." He goes, "What did you get your wife, Mick?" And Mick goes, "Well, I bought her a pair of oven mitts and a dildo." He says, "Why'd you do that?" "Well, she wants something for the kitchen. If she doesn't like it, she can go screw herself." Well, that was just like talk about breaking the ice. Yeah, this is definitely R-rated. But
I can see why you and Davidson get along so
Yeah.
well.
I mean, we're gonna have to. This is good. We were trying for a PG rating, but I mean, Dale, you're right.
We have no chance.
No,
Oh,
let's have goals that we can actually, strive to make.
Yeah, I mean, we're serious journalists here. We're trying to make it.
We're seriously something. There's no doubt.
We're gonna have to edit the shits, but we're not Edison. We're not gonna edit dildo.
I got you asked a musical question, and my wife and I watched the last official game from Maple Leaf Gardens with the Blackhawks, and Stompin' Tom Connors came out, and the hockey song it's so corny, it's great. And you get people in Toronto, they're singing the song. It's kind of like in Boston, when Sweet Caroline. And do you guys get any when that song comes on, the PA or something? Do you guys kind of give it a wink because he was a Canadian treasure. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, no, he is, and he's from Skinner's Pond, Nova Scotia, or Prince Edward Island. And what's funny is I told somebody the other day I'm going to go watch Tom Cochran. He goes, "Oh, well, you go enjoy Stompin' Tom." I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, Tom Cochran. That's that Tom Cochran. That's Stompin' Tom." I go, "No, it isn't. Stompin' Tom is Tom Connors. He used to have a piece of wood and he'd bang it, but he had
yeah,
so many epic songs, and the hockey song is definitely ranks right up there. And yeah,
Sudbury Saturday night.
and
And
Sudbury, yeah.
don't they have a statue of Tom outside the arena in Sudbury?
They do, yeah. So
Yeah.
he's an icon, and yeah, no, there's always songs that really get to people. For me, Kevin Collins was one of the best linesmen I ever worked with, and he was just like a fitness fanatic, and he worked out at the YMCA. So every game he worked and they played YMCA, he would literally be on the ice doing the YMCA, and it's like I'd be laughing. I'm going, well, you can get away with it because you've been in the league for 30 years and you're the best at the business, but yeah, no, it's good. There's definitely certain songs that really get to you after a while.
Cubby,
Well,
sing the hockey song. I've never heard it.
Bobby, I cannot sing. Fenway can sing it probably better than I can. Hey,
Yeah.
we're coming up on it, guys. We're in a little longer today, but this has been amazing. Jeff, we're gonna have to have you back on this. We just scratched the surface on stuff we could talk about. I mean, we could do a whole show on just ejections and guys that really got under your skin or you got under their skin, just like with Dale and Jimmy and Bob.
That would be a mini series.
It would be a mini
Exactly.
series. I mean, because you guys are telling us stories that most people can't hear, and they're hilarious. We may
I
have to
think we should
mute
put it
Bob
on the
next time
Hallmark channel.
we may have to mute Bobby next time using the word dildo, but I mean, hey, well.
The Hallmark channel. What better? Where can we got to put this out on the Hallmark channel?
Oh my,
Well, what about
I
Disney? We
was
do
thinking,
Disney.
I was thinking, Bob, instead of a dildo, you can call it a Steely Dan because that's their name is slang for a mechanical dildo. So
Here we
you
go
want to go
again.
there.
All right.
On that
I've
note,
got a reputation to uphold here.
Next
thing
time
we
I
learned
can,
is
next time I can talk about people like this, Major Jim Parks, who I went to his 100th birthday party yesterday.
oh,
Oh,
very
baby.
cool.
He was the 19-year-old D-Day veteran that he turned 100 recently, and 19 years old, he jumped out of a landing craft and ran ashore at Juno Beach, and he's still with us, and I'm taking him to a couple of Toronto games coming up.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
great.
That's
That's
nice.
absolutely
That is
amazing.
awesome.
One
My
thing we
dad was a
learned is
veteran, World War II.
Oh,
See,
that's
he
you got your
got D-Day trips.
Cool.
Yes, Bob. The Canadians did fight in World War II. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, I learned that from you. Another thing we learned, Scotty, is that you're very long-winded. So
Who
kind of
knew?
like Dale, so that's why they get along. No offense, Dale.
Whoa.
Weren't the
silent.
Canadians in charge of Gold Beach on D-Day?
Juno Beach, close, but Juno Beach.
Which one?
Juno.
Okay, Juno. I knew it was one
Juno.
of the beaches they were in charge of.
Yeah, so the Canadians went at Juno Beach, and on their right flank was Gold Beach, and on their left flank was Sword Beach, and those were British beaches.
Yeah.
oh well.
See,
Hey, Scott.
this isn't we do education on this show. So
Yeah,
You do.
absolutely.
Who was? You said your grandfather was fought in the
no,
war.
my
Jim?
dad.
Oh, your
My
dad.
dad
And
was
who?
my dad was a World War II veteran.
So
Army Air Corps.
okay, cool. That's amazing. Was he a ground crew or was he up in the air?
He was up in the air. My wife's dad was the same way, but he never left the state sides. But he was a 4-year veteran, also era World War II era. So
Yeah, no, it's amazing what they did. In
absolutely.
Canada, our population was only around 8 or 9 million people, and we had 1.1 million people served,
Yep.
and of that, 45,000 people died, and
Yep.
they never came back. So yeah,
Well, I hate to cut it short, guys, but we could talk for another 2 hours. And
Absolutely.
Bob could regale some more interesting stories to us, but we have to save that for next time. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We will be back again with another version of this insanity. He's Dale Scott. He's Jim Joyce. He's Bach and Bob Davidson, one of our favorite people. And Scott Driscoll, thank you so much. We're going to have you back. And it was great. We really
Thanks,
was.
Scotty.
anytime, guys. Great to see you.
Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everybody.
Take care, man.
Thanks for
Thanks.
tuning in, guys. Remember, don't be a sheep. Don't be a follower. Always take the road to the left. You never know what you'll find. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Turning right tomorrow.